Tell us why and how you came to be a community organizer and or artist in the Mission District.
Think about that a second. How did I become?
How you
Okay. How did I become one? I think it's just through my fantasies. Remember, I didn't learn to read because I was so zoned out, and so all I would do is use my imagination, and I did not like school, and so it's interesting because I never wanted to be a teacher. My experiences in school were so racist and painful that it was really easy for me to be creative when I graduated, or my last senior years at Mission High School, and we had a walkout. And in that walkout, I saw change. We demanded to have justice. We demanded to have classes taught by people who reflected the population. We defied the teachers. We challenged them, and new teachers were coming in. And it was also the hippie era, and the Chicano movement. So I became creative. I became an artist through theater and dance, because that's the things I loved. Like my first talent show, and only talent show, was with El Tecolote at St. Peter's, and I started to, I wanted to be at State. I wanted to be an anthropologist. I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted all these things, I couldn't make up my mind what my major was, and I decided to go into the theater department at SF State, and like they do to all those women, they try to hold me back. I wanted to do a play and use the facilities, and as I paid for the school, I mean, why aren't I given permission to utilize all the things you let white male students do? I had to fight. It's like every step of the way has been a fight, and that's why I say, young people, you got more power than you think. But anyway, so I graduated with La Raza Studies and drama, and I utilized that, and then I went back to school and got a teaching credential, and where I taught theater in schools, and I wasn't conventional. Even my students says, why do we have to do plays about Cesar Chavez, and why do we have to do plays about the African diaspora and immigration and blah blah blah? And I said, you're gonna get that. You're gonna get that because that's what's been set up for you. But you need to know these stories, and you need to know how important they are, and they are for the people, and you are the people, and they loved it. So I mean, I have kids to this day, as a teacher, tell me how grateful they are that I taught them about Dia de los Muertos. I mean, I was doing it with a lot of other teachers too, but not as many. But we were the first to do it in the school, so I had other white teachers tell me, state and religion are separate. And I mean, they really gave me a hard time. I had to approach everything very creatively in a way that wasn't threatening, but I was getting to my students, like Day of the Dead, I was part of that first group of organizers, where I would paint faces and participate in making altars and doing live performances along the route, and taking children and and doing that. So, but when did it all start? I think it's been in me since I was a child because of St. Peter's Church. You know, I think that whole thing of wanting to help other people, you know, and the justice of it all. I think it was, you know, I remember getting to a fight with a teacher because she called Pancho Villa bandido in high school, and I like, what? My mother had talked to me about Pancho Villa, and talked to me about, you know, those Aztecs and those Mayan and how we were, you know, this very civilized culture, how we bathed before the Europeans bathed, you know. And it was like, I had that and I challenged the teacher, you know. In fact, we had to take a test and I wrote about Pancho Villa. Yes, I know the reality of that, you know, what challenges he had, but he was my hero at the time. And she put a big F on my paper in red and just kind of even showed it to the class as she handed it to me. I took the paper and I ripped it up. And then she said, well, she goes, for homework, you are to take your paper and write on the back why. Why you think you did or didn't deserve that grade. And I just like took a deep breath and everybody got up and walked out and I looked at my paper on my desk and lo junté, I got it all together and I went home and I told my mother, ¿Cómo ya? ¿Qué? Ya patrullaron? You know, she was like all for him and she goes, tape that paper up. And so I taped it up and wrote in the back why I thought, you know, he was not a bandit, you know. I go, he outsmarted you Americans, you know. And that's the other thing, you know. I think the challenge has been two cultures all the time, you know. We go back and forth. You're not really Mexicana and you're not really from, you know, USA, you know, you're always, you know, and I'm now, and I want to share this with you if you have to, I say, I am who I am and I am beautiful, I am smart, I'm loving, I'm giving, and you accept it or don't accept it, but you're dumb if you don't, you know, because I bring a lot, you know. I really, you own yourself, you know, you own that.
Describe the kind of community organizing work you did in the Mission District.
Well, I've organized, I think I've always worked as an organizer, you know, even with Tecolote, with Juanito Gonzalez, and with Mission Cultural Center, with Horizons Unlimited, you know, for fundraising, for bringing awareness. I mean, I could go, I mean, that's been my whole life, you know, organizing teachers, organizing lots of festivals, you know, like the Carnival San Francisco, Children in Power. These are events that happen that I would organize for all the children to come to La Raza Park and just, you know, get families together. I that's what I do best, really, when I get down to it, you know.
What were your strengths as a community organizer?
I think my biggest strength is I really love my community. I think love was really important. Also, my strength has been other women supporting me, encouraging me, and like my mother, like different people in the community. And I think that's what gave me the courage to put myself out there. So that was one of the big things for me. And also, the more educated I got, I think the better understanding of what the community needed or how to understand what was going on. And I think truth, regardless how ugly, how disastrous it may seem, but truth will let you, what's the saying? truth will free you, or there's a saying, do you know? Okay. The truth will liberate you. There's a saying.
Set you free.
Yes,
Yeah.
the truth will set you free, regardless of what the situation should be.
Okay. What did you accomplish as a community organizer in the Mission District?
Well, I think one of the biggest things I accomplished is putting on a lot of different activities, you know, like carnival, street fairs, and being a teacher, educating students, more gearing towards what's needed and where we come from in the community, and exposing other children who may not be from the mission but are African American, who are Asian, Chinese, you know, Korean, Cantonese, Filipino, just kind of giving them that awareness of as a community, you know, because the mission's never been just one group of people but several. So I think I've given my students, I was also a counselor, that vision to have for themselves and their community, you know.
And looking back at your days as a community activist, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think as a woman, we sit back a lot and we let men just kind of take ownership, which is, you know, I mean, that's the way it's been for centuries throughout the world. And I think if I could go back, I would take more ownership and promote more women in the community and life. I mean, many times I've sat in a meeting room and I'll say something, and then all of a sudden, if a white man repeats what I say, it's like, oh, that's a great idea. It's like they hear you, you know? I think one of the things I've learned is that we need to be more forceful. If not for ourselves, we may be called. I mean, when I was director of Carnival, I laid my foot down on certain areas, and I was called, you know, a bitch, the B word. I was called bossy. I was called all kinds of things, you know, where men are not those, and that's, you know, known throughout. But as Latina, I think it took me a long time to kind of, you know, stand up more for who I am, and try to not do it so much for myself, but for the future that comes. Because as women, you know, we're especially as Latinas, you know, I know my mother loved me to death. I know she did, but who was the first one served at dinner or whatever meal? My brother. Who was the first one acknowledged? My brother. Who the expectations were higher for? My brother. You know, and it's such a cultural thing that if I could do things a little different, but, you know, as time goes on, as each generation comes, you know, it's like, let's really look at everyone equally, you know. I'm not saying that men don't have great ideas or have been very instrumental in the movement. I'm just saying that women, we sort of sit back, and a lot of the movement that happened in the mission, the backbone to those movements, like Los Siete, Carnival, different, you know, community centers, has been women behind it, you know, and we don't acknowledge it enough. And I mean, I once applied for a job, I won't say where or what, but when I asked why am I not getting it, the person, a male, very much, it says, you're not strong enough, your voice is not heard. And that was a good lesson, you know. And I thought I was very much on top of my game, but, you know, it's like the stereotype of women are always in front of us. So that's one of the things that I would do differently, and probably a lot of other things, but that's part of the process of learning. You have to make mistakes in order to learn, you know. And so never be afraid, you know. It's a lot of work. You're willing to do the work, you have no problems, you know. That's part of the learning process.
How has the Mission District changed from the time you were actively involved?
Okay, well, let's say that the mission was very diverse, okay? And Ellen, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a homegrown San Franciscan in the mission. The mission has never been all Latino, all anything, all white. It's always been very, very diverse. I went to school with kids that were Samoan, Filipino, Russian, just regular Anglo, whatever. I went to school with black kids. So what we had in common is that we were blue collar families. And so I never felt like less than from my peers, but I did feel it from the teachers, And so at that time, I could feel the racism. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know it was racism. I just thought there was something wrong with me. So in that state of being, as all children, we create mechanisms to survive that. And my mechanism was to, zone out, just live in my own world and create fantasies. And I went through school till I was 11 years old before I learned to read, because I just didn't find any interest, Not everybody had that experience, but that was my experience. So I felt like I had two lives. I had my home life, the community and the church, and then I had this racist institution that from the age of 5, I zoned out, So everything that was thrown at us through television, the Leave It to Beaver show, it was like that was what you were supposed to be, And of course we weren't white, we didn't have a car, we didn't have any of those things. So what happens, I become 16, and Father Casey from the church, I was in a youth group where we had the first Mass in Spanish. We started having music in the Mass, and we would do different activities. It was very kumbaya, So he invites me to go to San Jose to go hear Cesar Chavez and to go hear Tejerina Lopez. I can't think of his name right now, but look it up. I'll send it to you. Who talks about land rights, from New Mexico, I think. Anyway, I heard Cesar Chavez speak, and I was like, oh yeah, paz, la Virgen, we gotta strike, we gotta defend los campesinos and all that. Then I heard Tejerine. I was flabbergasted. I was like, where are the guns? We're having a revolution right now, because the way he spoke, it's like it opened my eyes that there was nothing wrong with me. It was the racism and the institution, and it's interesting how the worst I don't know how to say it, but the worst groups who have the hardest time in schools is the ones that the United States has had some war with, like Mexico, Native Americans, taking the Africans out of Africa, kidnapping them, turning them into slaves, which we benefit to this day. The United States benefits to this day. And what they did to, I mentioned 4? No, Native Americans, Africans, Mexico, and I think Hawaii too, what they did there. And really Puerto Rico, So that woke me up, and I had a different attitude, just different. And at that same time, when I was 16, there was a shooting. A policeman was killed, and 7 young men were accused of killing him, and they said son salvadoreños, and and realized, wait a minute, no, they said they were Mexicans and they were from El Salvador, Nicaragua. They were, and so it was like they were lumping everybody, they were guilty, as soon as they hit the media. And there was nothing for us to defend that. We didn't have newspapers. We didn't have television access. We didn't have any of that. So we started to organize, and people had to change my mind, because of course if it's on TV, it's the truth to some extent, right? Well, no, it wasn't the truth. That's not how it went down. So we started organizing, educating ourselves, and I switched from everything that I would do with the Catholic Church to what I would do for my community and the revolution. And so that's when I became very interested in organizing. I was very shy and very timid. I mean, it wasn't like I was this, macha girl, or, I was shy, and I had to learn. It took me quite a few years to have a voice, and I wasn't very articulate. I'm not very, I have a little dyslexia, and so my way of communicating, I was like always afraid to speak, or grammarly, and so I was bocha in English and bocha in Spanish. So it took a few years for me to get a voice, but the feelings were there, the passion was there, and I did a lot of just a lot of being in present, and so in that whole time, we started organizing. The Black Panther Party came into the community to help us, and the first newspaper was Basta Ya, and then you had Tecolote, and you had other papers too, communism, and I would go to different meetings to just kind of find my way, and who was I among all this, right? Then we had the Galeria de la Raza to promote artists. So we had to be our own advocates. So we had to have posters made, que viva los siete, free los siete, or we had to have our own clinics, our own drug programs, our own just whatever you see out here. A lot of it stems from that movement, and going to state. My first classes were right after affirmative action, and right after that, the most important thing, it was like we were all so excited about this movement. We go to San Francisco State, but yes, academic was important, and the classes and this, and we went, but what was even more important is coming back to the community and serving the community. And so I channel my energy into theater. I was into a lot of La Raza Teatro Cena, Teatro Latino, to kind of educate people in doing my own theater, and being part, for instance, right next door, was it right? Where am I? No, next door this way, was the 24th Street Tutorial Center. And we had kids coming from the projects into Balmy Alley. And it was pretty. It was, there was sometimes drug addicts hanging out, there were needles, it was dirty, there was potholes, and our kids would come through the alley to the shortcut to get to the 24th Street place, and we couldn't change it. It was a wonderful program, because we did sort of like a summer hill, let kids explore and be creative and create. And I was teaching one summer, and I was teaching the kids to make piñatas, God's eyes. It's like learning myself, because these are cultural things. It made me search my own culture even more. And like we had a little patio like this, and and we had kids just always creating, performing, but it was always a concern when they walked through Balmy Alley. So one of the persons who's my mentor too was Mia Gonzalez. You know, we couldn't change them. We couldn't get them to go around. So she said, well, if we can't change the children, let's change Balmy Alley. And we decided to paint murals. So the very first mural on Balmy Alley was our children. You know, we wanted to take ownership, and we asked Patricia Rodriguez, Irene Perez, Irene Perez, Graciela, I can't think of her last name. I should come with this name of list. But anyway, we asked all these women who lived on Balmy Alley to paint a mural, and before you know it, you could see what it is now. And it's gone through several changes. But what was important in this lesson, in this experience, was that we didn't do it to beautify. You know, there was a purpose there. The purpose was to make it safe and to care for the children. And every muralist that's come after that has been to give a message. Again, that la causa ayudarnos, that cause to help each other. So I'm really happy that I just went to an opening last night, on Saturday, and it was Mujeres Muralistas painting again, giving homage to women. I just love the mission, you know? And I mean, I just had a little part in the whole thing, but it was a seed, you know, just a little seed. So I'm going to stay doing community work, working at Horizons Unlimited, working at different places like Arriba Juntos, and having all these wonderful organizations that have spurred up. That's the biggest difference. I don't see that many organizations like we had before. I don't see the same resources, and I don't see the same kind of passion, you know, the urgency like we had back in the day.
From your vast experience, what would you say are the characteristics of a good community organizer?
Yeah. I've approached my community organizing very organically. It was never about me. You know, it was always about the community. And if you're sincere with that, you know, you will have a following because they'll see that, you know. I wasn't like the kind of organizer that was, I mean, we all have our talents, and we need everybody's talent. My talent was dancing and storytelling and having vision, you know. I'm pretty good at saying, okay, I can see the big picture and how to get there, you know. I could so those are the things I brought in. Like when I went to work at Horizons, I was like 23, 22. And I mean, you know, they trained us, and so I was a counselor, and I would listen to students and, you know, talk to them and help. But I thought, well, you know, it would be great to have a theater group. So one of the things I did at Horizons was, I'm not really sure I had the first theater dance group where the neighborhood teenagers and not just from Horizons, but their brothers and sisters and people of interest would come in and dance, and then we write a play about the community. You know, if we complained about San Francisco Hospital, they would act it out. Or if the Black community and the Latino community met, we would dance, you know, sort of like that challenge, you know, but coming together. And so the stories were always about helping the community, you know. I also worked at San Rafael Familia Center, and I also did that kind of thing with newcomers. And so I always had theater, I always had the arts, we do poetry. That's how I kind of brought in my organizing to the community. And that's why I was like so grateful to Galeria de la Raza, because that's where I first did my poetry, first dance, you know. There was a place for me to do that, you know. But I think what's really, really important, regardless of whatever you organize, a good leader is a person who takes care of their people. You know, if you're a good leader, if you take care of them, they know it and they will do anything for you. You know, I have had, I organized Carnival. I was the first director of Carnival San Francisco. And what I did was very difficult because I was still pretty naive in a lot of ways. But, you know, I could see the picture. And as long as I could see the picture, I may have to go around this way instead of straight up this way, but I'm going to get there. And I did. And what I would do, you know, I mean, I had to talk to, you know, the police department for licenses, the officials, you know, the mayor, everybody. It's very intimidating. I'm just this little Chicana from the mission. And, but what I would do is that I would sell T-shirts that belonged to Carnival, and I would take that money and I'd run over to where all the volunteers were for paint, for doing decorations, and I'd feed them, you know. Or if they had something going on, I'd say, okay, how can we help you, you know. And I think a lot of people today organize, and they're very good organizers because they're efficient. They want to do this, they want to do that, but they forget you have to take care of your own. And if that means going around this way, because whatever it is, you have to see the bigger picture. But a good leader, you know, has to understand who's following him or her, who's working with her, who's, you know. So I think that's really important. And I always felt love in the mission. You know, like my role model, like Dorinda Moreno was a poet and a writer, Chicana, and she was like out there, you know. But I always felt she cared, and I always felt like her nurturing. And I think that's why women, it's so much easier for women to do that. I think women make great leaders, you know. Did that answer your question?
I think so.
What was the question again?
From your vast experience, what would you say are the characteristics of a good community organizer?
And to know why you're doing things. You know, what is it? What is at hand, you know? And it's a lot of work, you know. And sometimes you have, as a leader, you got to get your hands dirty too. It's not just delegating the work, you know. And you want to share your vision. You know, I think that's what makes a good leader.
So what advice would you give young people today who see themselves as community organizers?
Well, the first thing I want to say to the young people of the Mission District is that this didn't happen on its own. There was a lot of struggles, a lot of work that went behind it. You know, Tecolote just didn't happen, and a lot of the things that did happen started out in homes and garages and you know, just homes, you know. And before you know it, we had storefronts. Before you know it, we had centers. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to say is that if you don't preserve it, no one else will. If you don't continue to work, no one else will. And a lot of our gente will fall through the holes, through the cracks, like it's already happening now, you know. We are being so gentrified. It is just so sad, you know, una tragedia. But we're strong, and there's no reason why we can't, you know, move forward like what you're doing now, you know.
Okay. Lastly, do you feel you have fulfilled the purpose of your life?
No, I don't feel like I fulfilled the purpose of my life. I think when I die, I could say, okay, I'm done. But no, I think that's another misperception about elders. You know, when you turn 65, there's something that chemically happens in your brain. It's like a super creative charge, you know. I'm kind of still waiting for it. So, no, I think as long as there's a struggle, you know, I've come to the conclusion that, you know, it's so vast. I mean, since the Spaniards came here, well, since the conquest, that especially in the Americas, we have another 500 years to go before we can maybe get to that place. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just maybe going way out there, but I don't know. I don't feel like I have. I'm very grateful for all the things that I've done, for all the experiences that I've had, for this city to allow me to be in such diversity culturally, you know. I feel extremely rich, you know. I was in Japanese theater. I studied with Nomura Mansaku, a treasure from Japan. I've traveled to a lot of countries. I've met people. I feel like my identity, my culture. I'm not just Mexicana, which is fantastic to be. I love that I'm Mexicana. But the world is big. I also love that I can dance. I'm a salsera. Love Asian food. I love African culture. And I've gone through such a series here. I wanted to be Puerto Rican really bad. I wanted to be African American really bad. I wanted to be Japanese really bad, you know, and it's like, it's a compliment, you know, to those different cultures, you know. I'm going to tell you a little confession. I once painted my face black because I wanted to see what I would look like as black. And when I took the pictures, my friend, don't you dare show them to anybody. They're not going to get it, you know. They're going to think you're, you know, doing a whole, what's it called?
Blackface.
Yeah, blackface, but it's like a comedy that they used to do, tinsel. I don't know. But anyway, it was really a compliment, you know, to the culture. So, because I used to take Afro-Haitian dance. So, what do I want to do in the future? You know, I still have a future, so I want to support you guys, you know, for what you're doing, because it's important and you're continuing the work, you know. I've slowed down, you know, physically, so, you know, it's important that us elders, you know, give wisdom as best we can, you know. That's our job now.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Okay, one of the things first of all, I want to say is that we've come to a new age with multimedia, with digital. And I think it's really, really important that you document everything from now on. I wish I had documented a little bit more, like kept all the flyers. I would have 100 flyers, if not more, of the different events I organize. Not big events, some big, like Carnival San Francisco, but other small ones. So I think it's really important for our movement to have record of it, to inspire people, to look at, oh, if we're going to do this, look how they did it, you know. I think that's really important. I think the other thing that is important is to give homage to the people before me, because I wouldn't have gotten to San Francisco State had it not been for like Roger Alvarado, Manuel Lares, you know, all these people who fought for me, who we fight for you, who you're going to fight for the next generation. And I think that besides that, I think that always take care of each other. Always. If you're going to have a junta, you put some food there, you know. Life is short, and you want to make every experience wonderful, you know. And that's part of our media culture as Latinos, is that we enjoy that, we like that. That's how we socialize, you know. And I think it's important to maintain that. As you get to be more professional, you know, it might be less, you know. So bring it back, horn in on it, you know. This is our roots. There's a reason for that. I think you also, in this society, it's work, and this and that, and you have to go back to what is really important and valuable, and that is familia, you know. And that's how I've looked at my community, as my familia. When I went to the ceremony here at Balmy Alley, I hadn't seen people in years, but it felt wonderful. It felt like familia. And that's what we are, you know. We are familia. And take care of the people who are following you. You're leading something, you're organizing something, take care of them. And don't watch your egos, you know. Those are really, I've seen a lot of egos crash in the community, but I think that's just human nature, you know. But watch it. Remember the goal, the focus, the ideal, you know. And risk. Take a risk, you know. You can do it. You come from ancestors who have accomplished a lot, you know, and we are one piece of the giant. You know, we are a piece that made this to what it is today. Not one person in this community could say, oh, yo hice esto. We did it together, and that is how we get our strength, being together. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.